Okay.
So, hey y'all, thanks for coming out. Thanks for taking some time out of your busy evenings. I know it's it's summertime, sun's still out, people are out doing things. So thank y'all for joining us tonight. Appreciate your time. With us tonight, we have Alecia Barnette, who is a heck of a lot smarter and better looking than we are. Talking about long-term care insurance tonight. Alicia's been with FIG with Financial Independence Group, who is the firm that we use for all of our long-term care. Alecia, you've been with FIG for 20 years, is that right?
23 years.
Yeah, so she sort of kind of knows what she's talking about with this thing. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to her. At the end, there will be some time for questions. And yeah, Alecia, take it away.
Thank you so much, guys. It's always a pleasure to talk to Tommy and George. They're some of my favorite advisors out there in the industry, and they do nothing but good things for their clients. So thanks for having me. As they know, long-term care is a passion of mine. I get excited every time I talk about it. But today, before we get started, I want to just, as we're going through the presentation, just be thinking about some things. What comes to mind when you hear long-term care? How many of you have actually gone through a long-term care experience with a loved one, and what was that experience like? Were you actually providing the care, or were you coordinating the care, and what was that like? So think about how rewarding or difficult that was. Did you have a plan in place, or did you just have to reactively deal with it? So today we're going to really walk through a couple of different stages of this, and hopefully you'll leave here with a better understanding of what it is, what are some of the options of paying for this, and how you might be able to essentially add more efficiencies to your plan. There are 4 major myths of long-term care I want to discuss. The first myth is it won't happen. Excuse me here, having a little technical difficulty. It won't happen to me. So how many of you on the call think you are going to need some type of care in your life? Most people, if we were in a room and I asked you to raise your hand, I would say less than 50% of you would say that you need it, or that you're going to receive some type of care. Essentially, really you're at a greater risk of needing care. The reality is it's much higher for everyone, and we'll talk a little bit about the risk in a few minutes. The second myth that we're going to talk about is Medicare or Medicaid have me covered. So many people think that the government is going to pay for care, and it's okay if you're laughing secretly. Medicare is actually only covering up to 100 days of skilled care, and there's some stipulations that go along with that. You need to have been admitted into a hospital for at least 3 days. You actually have to show signs of getting better, so it's really short-term care, not long-term care. And those are some of the stipulations that Medicare will require in order to pay for those 100 days. Also, the last thing that you want to do is spend down your assets to be placed into a Medicaid facility. Medicaid's a great program, but it's only great for those that need it. If you don't need it, wouldn't you rather receive care in the home? Medicaid does not pay for care in the home. And most people have worked really hard with their financial plans and building out a future to obtain goals. The last thing you want to do is spend down your assets to be placed in a Medicaid facility. Our next myth is, that's what my savings are for. Most people really aren't aware of the cost of care in the area. It's more expensive than you think. If you actually go and write this down, this is a great resource. If you go to longtermcare.gov, it's got great information about long-term care in general. It talks about statistics, how much care costs, things of that nature. Well, if you scroll down to the bottom of that page, there's a little tab that says cost of care. If you click on that cost of care, it's going to redirect you back to what's called the Genworth Cost of Care Survey. You can actually type in your area. So if you put in your city or your zip code, it's going to bring up the local cost for nursing home, assisted living, adult daycare, and home health care. This example here is based on the Charlotte, North Carolina area. That's where I'm located. And of course, it may be a little bit different in your area. So I encourage you to go out and type that information in. But notice here that in 2020, the home health care costs are currently running around, and this is average, there are also above average costs, but it's running on average about $4,000 a month. For assisted living, it's typically going to cost around the same, so $4,600 a month. And then nursing home is going to almost be double that. So we're looking at $8,608 a month. So it's pretty expensive. And if you think about that, if you need care for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, that can be rather expensive. But check this out. You probably won't need care today. So what I encourage you to do in that Genworth Cost of Care survey, there's a little slide you can move that puts it out 5, 10, 15, however long when you might think you need care, and it's going to tell you those future costs. So here, for example, if you were 60 and the average care begins at age 80, so in 2040, that cost has gone up to $72.32 a month for home care, $8,300 for assisted living, and $15,000 a month. So as you can see, it's pretty pricey. So be thinking about this as you go along. If you don't have a plan in place, your money is your plan. So by default, you do have a plan. All right, so let's take a look at our fourth myth. My family will take care of me. And I say this a little sarcastically, but do they know this? What does that really look like? Long-term care events don't happen just to you, they happen to your whole family. And you want to ensure that you and your loved ones are on the same page. I watched my mother take care of my grandmother for 5 years. And I will tell you right now, long-term care does not bring families together, it tears families apart. The facts are that 61% of sons and 51% of daughters surveyed hope that they don't become their parents' caregivers. And 68% of Americans surveyed agree their children should not be burdened to provide the care. So again, it's an important conversation that you need to have. It negatively impacts women in the family, and those caring for ill parents are twice as likely to experience depression or anxiety. It really is emotionally hard on the children. And cost is nearly $325,000 due to lost wages and diminishing work hours. And again, we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes, but today we're really going to talk about long-term care in a different way. We're going to talk about the great income gap. So again, let's think about long-term care a little differently when planning. What's the goal when climbing a mountain? Most people would say to get to the top, right? Actually, it's getting to the bottom without breaking your back, without breaking your neck, getting down that mountain successfully. Many of the baby boomers have reached the top. They have gone through or completed the accumulation phase. Now they're starting to retire and enter the distribution phase. This is why we are seeing a lot of focus, and what you're hearing obviously from George and Tommy, you're going to hear a lot about retirement income and retirement income strategies. So what are some of the issues during the descent, during that distribution phase? What can happen that can disrupt that? Would it be having enough retirement income? Maybe the low interest rate environment we're in, because certainly you have to make a lot of money to be able to afford to pay for those costs of care. And then last but not least, healthcare costs can disrupt the distribution phase. But more specifically, having enough income in retirement to pay for care if you need it. So what, in your retirement years, what would be the reason for your income needs to suddenly skyrocket? Let's say, for example, you're living well on $100,000 per year, but then suddenly you need to take an additional $70,000. So on top of that $100,000, you're using $170,000. What do you think could cause that to happen? Most would say some kind of health issue, or maybe you or your spouse become frail and you need assistance in your home or in some type of care setting. Where would you get that additional $70,000 a year? Do you think you could earn enough interest on your money to get that additional income? Okay, so how do we fill the gap? When your income needs suddenly skyrocket, where do you get the income stream to fill the gap? Many people are going to liquidate, I would say, the conservative assets, because you don't want to take your qualified dollars. That would cause big tax implications. You don't want to sell your house. So many are going to begin to liquidate other investments in managed accounts, annuities, cash, or cash equivalent. Long-term care is simply an income issue, not an asset issue. So how do we fill that gap? When your income, again, when your income needs suddenly skyrocket, what do? Will this affect you? Will your assets last? If you begin withdrawing money out of those accounts, is that going to affect you? And again, can you get a rate of return high enough? Do you think, George and Tommy, you guys can get a rate of return high enough to get that additional $70,000 a year?
No.
It'd be pretty difficult, right? All right, so here, this is a diagram of what describes what we call the great income gap. So as an example, if you retired at age 65, you're probably doing pretty well. And let's say suddenly at age 75, you have a health issue. You can probably manage some of the cost because you've done well in retirement. But let's say at age 80, you're diagnosed with Alzheimer's. This means that you're spending more per month than you'd actually planned. This is what we actually call the great income gap. So we need one more piece to fill that gap. So let's talk about some of the problems, especially with something like Alzheimer's. It's growing fast and fast, and this is really disturbing. So kind of scary statistics here. So an estimated, and this is 2016, so imagine how much this has changed. In 2016, 5.4 million Americans of all ages have Alzheimer's. 1 in 9 people over age 65 has Alzheimer's, and by mid-century, they're saying 1 person every 33 seconds is going to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And these numbers are expected to triple in the near future. So pretty scary if you ask me. And many people have heard the statistics that, of course, 70% of people over the age of 65 will need care at some point in their life. However, 1 in 5 are actually going to need more. Here's the biggest problem. Most people believe they're in the 30%. Remember I said if we were in a room and I asked you to raise your hand? Most people don't think it's going to happen to them. And if they don't think it's going to happen to them, they're not going to put a plan in place. But here's what we know. Men and women make decisions to have a plan to protect the people that they love. The people that are really going to be affected when care is needed, those are the consequences to not properly planning. And being unprepared for an extended health care can have a big impact, not just on your life, but on your spouse and your family. Your spouse may feel obligated to take care of you. Sometimes the financial situation will dictate it, but the stress and responsibility can often make the caregiver ill as well. And I saw that with my mother when she took care of my grandmother. She had back issues and could barely get from one place to the other. And when a spouse isn't involved, other loved ones often carry the burden. Here's the reality. When you need care, your life doesn't end, someone else's may. Sometimes the eldest daughter quits her job. Maybe she moves in with you, or maybe you move into her home. She might give up her career, as any decent child would feel obligated to do. So how do we fill that income gap? So how do we fill that stream and take care of and backstop the risk against a long-term care need? So there are really 2 ways to do that. We have traditional and asset-based long-term care. Many of you have probably heard of traditional long-term care insurance. I like to use the analogy owning your contract versus renting it. Renting isn't bad, right? It's typically the cheapest way to buy the most amount of coverage. However, there's risk associated with traditional long-term care. Again, it's like renting. Rates can go up. If you don't use it, you lose it. If you wake up an angel and you don't need any type of care, then someone is going to get nothing. So again, there's risk. Still a great way to insure against the risk, but there are alternatives now called asset-based, long-term care. And these are a little different. They're written on life insurance or annuity chassis. And again, it's like owning your contract. So if you live and need long-term care, you have a benefit. If you wake up an angel and you don't need care, you've got a death benefit. And if you want to quit, you can get some or all of your money back. So again, owning your contract versus renting it. So if you were to self-fund, this is an example of an option that may work for you. This is really the concept of asset-based long-term care. So if a portfolio has moderate, conservative, and aggressive assets, most people prefer to use their conservative assets first in the event of needing long-term care. And the government has allowed certain life insurance or annuity contracts to be accessed while alive, tax-free for expenses associated with needing care. So here's what that might look like. By using this option, you could reposition an asset or income to provide additional funds for long-term care. So in this example, we're repositioning $125,000. And then by doing that, you're going to get additional funds. Depending on the carrier, you can get anywhere from 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, or even unlimited benefits for long-term care purposes. And unlimited is the only way to really cover the cost of something that might last 5, 10, or 15 years, like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or dementia. And we rarely get asked, how does this work if I die? Most people understand that, again, if it's on a life insurance chassis or an annuity chassis, if you pass away, your beneficiary is going to get something rather than nothing, like in the traditional long-term care contracts. So let's take a look at some case studies so that maybe you can understand how that works. So there's really 4 ways to fund an asset-based long-term care plan. We have highly appreciated non-qualified annuities, cash or cash equivalent, or what I like to call dead assets or rainy day funds, funds that you're just setting aside for emergency purposes. Qualified dollars, because many of us have a disproportionate amount of money in qualified funds. And then income. So let's look at some case studies using these 4 different approaches on funding a plan. So let's look at this first hypothetical example. We have a 70-year-old male and female. They've done a great job with income. They've done a great job preparing for retirement, except for the long-term care protection. So they have an existing annuity that they're not going to turn on for income. It's kind of their rainy day fund. So what we're going to do in this example is we're going to reposition. We're going to move from our right pocket to our left pocket, $150,000. We're going to 1035 because it's in an existing contract. It's a tax-free transfer, so you're not paying taxes on that. Then you're going to get income of $60,132 per year, tax-free. That $150,000 day one is going to turn into $450,000 tax-free, specifically for care. So again, you're going to get, if you need care, you're going to get $60,132 per person until that $450,000 is gone. What's awesome about that too is I like to call it a tax-free savings account, because any money that comes out is going to be tax-free for long-term care, because again, the government has allowed us to use certain life insurance or annuity contracts to be utilized tax-free for long-term care purposes. And here's the good news as well. If you don't use it, you don't lose it. That $150,000 or whatever it's grown to would go to the beneficiary if you don't need it. And check this out. If you invested $150,000 and you had a 5% return on your tax-deferred money, it would take you 22 years to equal $450,000 tax-free. If you invested $150,000 at 5% return on taxable money, it would take you 29 years to equal $450,000. So you're simply just repositioning that money. It's still an asset on the balance sheet, but if you need care, your dollar turns into $3 for long-term care. So it's a great way for this couple to utilize their money that they're never going to need it for income. They understand they can't earn enough interest in any account to equal this income this policy provides for long-term care. And again, the accumulated value was the death benefit. Of course, that's secondary, but they did like the fact that their family would receive it if they never used it for care. So let's take a look at our next example here. This is a male, age 60. He's got a CD. He's done a great job of, again, with retirement income. He's done a great job preparing for retirement, except for long-term care protection. He's not concerned with needing care for the average length of stay because they've accumulated some assets. His main concern is if he needed care for, any type of long-term care services, home care, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, things of that nature. So what we're going to do here is we're going to move that into a product that's going to provide $48,000 per year, tax-free. It's a 6-year income stream specifically for long-term care. We're going to put 3% inflation. At age 60, we probably don't need care for a good 20, 30 years, so we want to keep up with the cost of care. And here's the good news. If he doesn't use it, he doesn't lose it. So again, if he wakes up an angel and doesn't need care, his beneficiaries are going to receive $104,000. So it's a great way to utilize that $96,000 that's just sitting there if he doesn't need it for income, if it's great rainy day funds, because again, if you haven't allocated something, you've allocated everything because your money is your plan. All right, let's take a look at another example. So we've got a 70 and a 71-year-old. Again, a lot of people have a disproportionate amount of money in qualified funds. I know the RMD, or the required minimum distribution age, has gone up, but you can certainly take those early. And she's going to need, he's going to need it in a year, and she's going to need it as well. So they don't need their RMDs. They also don't have long-term care, and they didn't want to buy traditional because they didn't want to deal with an expensive policy with some possible premium increases every year. But now they're interested due to family and friends experience. So they like the idea of the benefit passing to their grandchildren if they don't need it. We're going to move $200,000 over to a product that's going to have internal required minimum distributions. So essentially you're moving $200,000 over, and then they're going to take $24,000 a year out to fund a plan that's going to provide $51,108 per year each lifetime income stream specifically for care. And guess what? That's all tax-free. We're converting those taxable dollars into tax-free. Now, you're never going to get out of paying Uncle Sam, but this is a great way to utilize those retired minimum distributions if you don't ever need to use them. And in this case, they didn't need that $24,000. It's going to satisfy the RMDs, and it's going to buy them long-term care lifetime benefits, $51,000 per person. If they both need care, that's $102,000 a year lifetime income stream, tax-free for long-term care purposes. And guess what? If they don't use it, they don't lose it. $212,000 minimum death benefit that's going to come out tax-free to their beneficiaries. So again, a great way to utilize those qualified dollars. And they really love the idea of passing this to their grandchildren if they don't use it. All right, let's take a look at one more example here. We've got a 60-year-old male and a 58-year-old female. This couple has high income and they don't want to reposition a single premium because they don't want to allocate that much money up front. But again, they're high income earners. They saw what their grandparents went through and how their parents had to do the caregiving, and they don't want their children to do that. They have plenty of life insurance, but they just did not have a plan in place for care. So what we're going to do is we're going to pay $87.13 a year, and that should say the 10 years shouldn't be there. My apologies, but it's $87.13 a year. It's going to guaranteed to never go up. It's a $48,000 per person lifetime income stream, or $4,000 a month per person. So if they both need care, $8,000 a month. We're going to put 3% compound inflation on the rider. That's going to increase their benefit, and if they don't need care until they're age 80, then we're looking at around $91,000 a year. So that's going to go up as the care costs go up. If they die and they don't use it, we're looking at a death benefit of $133,000. So again, they don't need the life insurance, but they're happy that it has a death benefit. Most importantly, they've got a guaranteed premium that they're paying. When they just go on claim, if they need care, those premiums will waive, but it's going to pay out $4,000 a month per person, lifetime benefits, 3% compound inflation. So again, a great way to use income to fund a plan. And if you didn't want to use, for example, all the qualified dollars, you could just pull money out each year to fund it. So that's an alternate way of funding a plan. Many different ways, and it's certainly not a one-size-fits-all approach. So I would welcome you to call and talk with Tommy and George. So what are your next steps? You want to begin having a talk with those in your life that'll make the best decisions on your behalf. You want to express what your decisions are with your loved ones. You want to meet with the Journeys group and, again, talk about the different solutions out there. Those were just examples. It really isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, so I would highly recommend talking with these guys. Then, of course, you want to put your plan in place. Again, tell your loved ones so that they know how you want to be, where you want to receive your care, how it's going to be paid for, and whatever you decide, you need to do it now. Don't delay, because you're never going to be younger and healthier than you are now. And you have options. So that's the great news. With that being said, Tommy, I don't know if you can type in questions or if you can open the floor up, but I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss anything else that you'd like for me to discuss.
Yeah, so guys, if y'all that are here, if you want to use, there's a Q&A function. If you want to use that, you can just type them in the chat, and we can read them out. So yeah, just however y'all want to ask questions, we'll kind of open the floor. I know there's a lot of information shared, so please feel free to ask questions.
And again, I would schedule a free consultation with the Journeys group, simply because it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. 5 different people could really be in 5 different plans. It's just, it's going to be based on your health. It's going to be based on how you want to fund the plan. There are a number of different scenarios that go into deciding what plan is best for you, and I think that's best to discuss on a one-on-one basis.
And I also want to mention that this webinar is being recorded. So like I said, I know we went over a lot of stuff. So if you want to go back and take notes on it, I'd encourage you to do that. We'll be posting this pretty much everywhere. So I encourage you to go check that out.
Trying to chat, if not, we close it up.
Yeah, I don't see any questions.
I don't think we have any questions, so we're not going to keep you, Alecia. We appreciate your time tonight. You're a wonderful.
You got it. I appreciate it. You gentlemen have a great evening, and let me know how I can help.
Great. Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Again, thank y'all again for joining us. I really appreciate y'all taking some time out of your busy schedules to just kind of come sit and learn about this stuff. Thank you again to Alecia for taking time out of her busy schedule to come talk about this stuff. Again, this is a really important topic for us. We're very passionate about this. You can tell Alecia is very passionate about it. So if you do have questions, you want more information, call us 252-746-6785. I think most of y'all have our contact information. So give us a call, shoot us an email, and set up a time to meet with us, talk about this stuff, because it is important.
Yep.
So
So we're going to put our snorkel on and head home now because it's pouring rain out here.
So thank y'all again for coming. We'll be having more of these in the future. You'll be getting a survey after this. If you don't mind, just filling that out, letting us know how we did, giving us some ideas for future webinars, future events, things like that. And with that, we will let y'all enjoy your evening. And thank you again.
Thanks for attending.
Have a good one.